The Ashcroft family's monthly dinners were less about food and more about financial peacocking. This evening in the sprawling estate outside Napa Valley promised to be especially unbearable. It took my usual seat near the fireplace, quietly observing, while my cousins competed to see who could brag the loudest. Just bought a ranch in Jackson Hole, Preston drawled, swirling his wine. Right next to the guy who owns half of Silicon Valley. Please, scoffed Cassandra, flipping her designer clutch open with a flourish. We just closed on a vineyard in Tuscany. Any private accesto the med. You can't even put a pricey in that kind of view. I hid my smile behind my glass of iced tea. If only they knew, Nora. Aunt Evelyn's voice cut sharply across the table. You've been awfully quiet. Preston leaned in, his faux sympathy dripping. We were just wondering about your living situation. And there it was. What about it? I replied, setting down my glass. This cramped duplex in Portland, he said. Still renting, right? The one on Alder Street, Cassandra added, feigning surprise. Didn't know people our age still rented. I nearly laughed. The Alder Street complex was my company's first commercial acquisition under West Pine Holdings. To them, I was a struggling tenant. In reality, I was the owner. I like the space, I said evenly. You're 35, sweetie, Evelyn added with a patronizing smile. It's time to grow up. Buy something real. Real? Try a $1,800,000,000 portfolio of multifamily buildings, commercial towers, and yes, Ashcroft Plaza. The very property they gather in. Monthly X months ago. I acquired it discreetly through a private equity arm they'd never trace back to me. I've managed just fine, I replied. Preston smirked, you can't even afford a mortgage. I leaned back and let them talk because soon the lease renewal would come across their desks and guess whose name would be on the letterhead. Dad finally glanced up from his wine glass. Now, Preston, not everyone's blessed with your sharp instincts. Nora chose her path. Aunt Evelyn chimed in with a sigh as though I'd disappointed them by not marrying a hedge fund manager or becoming a lifestyle blogger. They thought I spend my days showing cheap walk-ups to broke grad students, barely scraping by on commission checks. What they didn't know was that Nora Hale, the family underachiever, was also West Pine Holdings, the anonymous firm quietly snapping up commercial and residential properties throughout the Pacific Northwest for the last decade. Speaking of real estate, Cassandra interjected with a sparkle in her eye, have you heard about that situation on Alder Street? Some firm bought the entire block. They're going to knock it all down, she added with mock pity, guess that little apartment of yours will finally go. I kept my expression neutral. I was the buyer, and I had no intention of tearing anything down. The Alder Street complex was a hidden gem of brick facades, vintage detailing, and rent protections for families who'd lived there for decades. I was deep in a historically respectful renovation. Really? I asked. Hadn't heard. Well, of course not, Preston smirked. Deals that size are way out of your league. If you get booted, Evelyn said brightly. You can always move back into the guest house. We'll help you find something more respectable. Maybe even someone respectable. I'm happy, I said flatly. And so is my landlord. Cassandra gave a tight laugh. You can't live a small life forever, dear. High used to mean something in the state. It still did, just not the way they thought. In real estate circles, West Pine was synonymous with ethical growth and tenant-first investing. The antithesis of my cousin's flashy developments that bulldozed communities for clout. Actually, Dad said, setting down his glass. This meeting's partly about business. The board's worried about the new owner of Ashcroft Plaza. It tilted my head. West Pine Holdings bought a majority stake 6 months ago, he said. No one knows who they are. Possibly a foreign investor. Preston nodded. Has Tobe. These tycoons. Love legacy properties. If only they knew that their feared mystery investor was sitting right here in a thrifted cardigan and scuffed boots. And now, Dad continued, they're asking tough questions, especially about our accounting practices, creative accounting, like the way Preston borrowed from the building fund to finance his Jackson Hole retreat, or how Cassandra labeled her luxury handbags as client engagement expenses. I am sure it's nothing serious, Aunt Evelyn said, her pearls twitching with unease. The Hale name still means something. That's just it. Dad cut in. This West Pine person doesn't seem impressive. Names. They've ordered a full audit. I watched the shift ripple across their faces. Panic tightly veiled behind designer smiles. An audit would uncover more than just questionable expenses. It would crack their whole game wide open. Maybe Nora could help, Cassandra said suddenly, her tone sugary. She works in real estate, doesn't she? Maybe she knows someone at the management company. They all turned to me at once. Just like that, I was no longer an embarrassment. I was potentially useful. I mostly work with smaller residential clients, I said smoothly. Nothing on the scale of Ashcroft Plaza. For God's sake, Preston snapped. You can't even help your own family. Mom gave him a warning glance, but her silence said enough, even. Dad was back to scrolling, uninterested in defending me. They had no idea how helpful I was about to be, just not in the way they hoped. Tomorrow morning, West Pine Holdings would release a public statement. Effective immediately, Ashcroft Plaza would undergo major operational reform. No more shadow budgets. No more nepotistic contracts. No more charging the building like it was a family credit card. I glanced around the penthouse. Artwork bought with maintenance funds. Couches triple their listed price. Fixtures installed by Cassandra's husband's firm with bloated invoices. Anyway, I said, rising and brushing off my jeans. Some of us have early mornings, Cassandra smirked. Off to show more rent-controlled studios. I slung my worn leather bag over my shoulder. Inside the board briefing, legal filings and renovation proposals worth more than anything in this room. No, Nora, Aunt Evelyn called sweetly. Next time, maybe dress more like a Hale. Appearances matter. I smiled. Don't worry, I said. Tomorrow, I'll look exactly like the Hales expect. They just didn't realize I was already the one running the show. If you've been quietly rooting for Nora all along, don't miss what happens when the boardroom doors open. Subscribe to the channel so you're the first to see how the family reacts when they realize the nobody they dismissed now holds the keys to everything. The next morning, I stood in my real office. An entire penthouse floor overlooking downtown Portland and prepared for the moment I'd planned for over a year. My assistant, Isla, walked in briskly, setting a cappuccino beside my laptop. The Ashcroft Plaza board is already seated, she said. Your family got here early trying to charm the independent members. I smirked, imagining Preston and Cassandra working the room in desperation. Audit packets all printed and distributed. The forensic team uncovered even more than expected. She paused. Are you sure you want to go through with this? Once they know, there's no turning back. They need to learn, I said quietly, that legacy isn't a license to abuse power. I turned to glass, catching my reflection. Gone were the jeans and cardigan. Today, I wore a deep navy Altasara suit. Sharp lines, soft strength. The kind of look Aunt Evelyn used to dream I'd wear to meet a husband. Instead, I'd wear it to Dismantle their house of cards. The ownership announcement goes live in 20 minutes, Isla added. Once it hits, you'll be unmasked. Then let's begin, I said, picking up my briefcase. The Ashcroft Plaza boardroom hushed as I entered. My family was clustered at the far end, unnerved, underdressed, and visibly rattled. Who are you? Preston barked. This is a private meeting. I calmly placed my briefcase at the head of the table. I'm Nora Hale, I said. Founder and sole owner of West Pine Holdings, the company that owns this building, and several others your family leveraged illegally. Evelyn turned ghost white. Cassandra's lips parted, but no sound came. My father's hands tightened in his pen. Nora, he breathed. I nodded, good morning. I opened the briefcase and began sliding audit reports across the table. Shall we review your financials? This is insane. Preston stammered. You read just what? I asked. The black sheep, the renter, the woman in consignment clothes. Cassandra blinked, but you show apartments. I work. I said simply. And I built something real with integrity. Not illusion. The board watched stunned as the proud Hale family began to unravel one page at a time. These folders, I said, contain detailed documentation of every misused fund, inflated invoice, and falsified receipt. Reports of financial irregularities involving Ashcroft Plaza's accounts. I began distributing the final set of documents. Preston, would you care to explain the $2 million in roof repairs that financed your Jackson Hole property? He flushed so hard and fast I thought he might pass out. Or Cassandra, I continued, flipping the next page. Maybe you'd like to walk us through your husband's invoices, charging 3 times the market rate for basic plumbing. You'd air out your own family's laundry like this, Aunt Evelyn gasped. No, I said evenly. You aired it out. I'm just making sure it gets cleaned. Dad finally spoke, voice low and pleading. Nora, sweetheart, we can't explain. Don't, I said, raising a hand out. I've watched this family treat our great-grandfather's legacy like a personal ATM. While you mocked my so-called humble life, I was building something better on values, not vanity. But why? Cassandra asked, dazed. Why pretend to be struggling? I didn't pretend anything, I replied. I lived modestly. I invested wisely. You assumed wealth had to be loud. The Alder Street building, Preston said, stunned. You really live there? I own it, I corrected. And most of the block. And no, I'm not demolishing it because some of us care about people, not just returns. Suddenly, phones around the table buzzed. One board member looked up, reading from his screen. West Pine Holdings reveals CEO's identity. Nora Hale, a strange member of the Hale family, confirmed as owner of $2 billion real estate portfolio. Fumbled her phone. Ranked among top ethical developers, she muttered. Historic preservation, tenant protections. This will ruin us, Cassandra whispered. Pale. No, I said firmly. This will save you from yourselves. Effective today, Ashcroft Plaza will operate transparently. No more shell games. No more sweetheart contracts. And if we didn't comply, Preston tried to sound bold, but his voice trembled. He smiled, then I'll pass these reports to the authorities. I'm sure the IRS would find them enlightening. Silence thickened. What do you want? Dad finally asked. I want you to remember what the Hail name meant before all this. I met their eyes one by own. Great-grandfather built communities, not just profit margins, issued gathering my papers. You have a choice. Work with me to restore that legacy, I said evenly. Or find somewhere else to live. I hear there's some lovely rentals in Lake Otsego. I turned to leave. Nora, wait. Dad's voice stopped me just as I reached the door. I was wrong about you. Yes, I replied quietly. You were? The aftermath unfolded like something out of a business drama. The media couldn't get enough of the hidden eyes of Portland, who'd quietly built a real estate empire and dismantled her family's illusions in own board meeting. Aunt Evelyn resigned from 3 local boards, too ashamed to show her face. Cassandra's husband's firm folded within weeks of the audit release, but not all of it was bitter. Arrested. Finally facing actual consequences, enrolled in a public university's real estate program, Cassandra began volunteering at transitional housing shelter downtown. She told me later it gave her more purpose than her gallery openings ever had. And Dad, he asked to learn the business, not as a father reclaiming control, but as a student. This time he wanted to understand what I'd built. 6 months later, I was sitting in my Alder Street apartment. Yes, I kept it, reviewing new quarterly reports. Ashcroft Plaza was thriving. Leases were stable. Tenant satisfaction was up, and small retailers on the ground floor were turning healthy profits. A knock broke my focus. I opened the door to find my mother. She wore jeans and namacup. It took me a moment to process the casualness. I got your invitation, she said, holding it up. A courtyard holiday party, I nodded. It's not quite your scene. No, she admitted, glancing around my modest space. But I am learning that maybe scene isn't everything. She picked up a photo, meet 23, beaming at my real estate license ceremony. I never asked, she said. Why this path? Because I wanted to build something real, I replied. Not just buy it and flaunt it. And now, she murmured. You control more than all office. I do, I nodded. But control isn't the goal. Purpose is, she looked at me seriously. Will you teach me? Come tonight, I said. Meet the family Ushve lived here for decades. Listen, that's where legacy begins. Later, I stood by my window, watching lights twinkle across Portland. This city had quietly made mine. Ashcroft Plaza glowed in the distance. No longer a monument to greed, but a symbol of restoration. Below me, the Alder Street building buzzed with quiet life. Brickwork, original wood beams, and garden courtyards were preserved with care. My phone pinged with new messages, partnership offers, speaking invitations, acquisition deals. West Pine Holdings was in high demand now. But I kept my schedule humane. My routine grounded. Success to me wasn't about outshining my past. It was about building something that mattered, something that would last. Sometimes the person they pity becomes the one they must learn from. And sometimes the best kind of triumph doesn't roar, it tenders. Week later at the Alder Street holiday party, I stood by the garden fountain, watching my family acclimatito a world they once dismissed. Mom sat beside Mrs. Lopez, a tenant here for 38 years, listening with genuine interest. Preston helped string lights with Mr. Keller, a World War II veteran and Longestrom resident. Cassandra laughed beside a table of kids icing sugar cookies. Slowly, they were learning. Real wealth isn't in what you can flaunt. It's in what you preserve, what you share, what you elevate. Dad joined me near the cocoa table. You know, he said, your great-grandfather believed buildings should shelter hearts, not just wallets. I nodded. I found his old ledgers, handwritten notes about protecting tenants. We forgot that. He looked at me, not like a daughter who'd gone off track, but like someone who'd carried the torch he'd dropped. You could have ruined us. Never the point, I said, watching a little girl twirl under the fairy lights. I wanted to build something that would outlast me. And sometimes the greatest success isn't in proving them wrong. It's in offering them a better version of right. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or quietly counted out, then maybe you see a little of yourself in me. I didn't set out to prove anyone wrong. I just wanted to build something real, something that couldn't be taken away because it was rooted in values, not vanity. If my story moved you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. What would you have done in my shoes? What have you built insolence while others doubted you? Let's talk about it. Let's give each other credit for the quiet work, the long nights, the tough choices. And if you're refacing a moment like I once did when the world expects nothing from you, don't shout louder. Just build stronger. You don't need approval to begin. You need purpose and consistency. The rest will come. Support this journey by subscribing to the channel. There are more stories ahead about resilience, redemption, and redefining success on your own terms. Because legacy isn't what you inherit, it's what you create, and sometimes the best revenge is not revenge at all. It's becoming exactly who they said you couldn't be. So, subscribe, stay with me, and let's build something that lasts.